Hello students, how are you all? So today we are covering chapter 9 and this is class 6 history NCERT. Okay. So let's start with the chapter and the name is New Empires and Kingdoms. Okay, new empires and kingdom. So now emergence of new empires and new kingdoms, and in this chapter we will cover about the kings of North India and kings of South India also. Their important centers, capitals, trading centers and all the information that is very relevant for our UPSC civil services examination. So let's start with the chapter 6. Prashasti and what they tell us. What are Prashastis and how do we know about these Prashastis? So there was this boy who was supposed to be acting as Samudragupta, right? Who is Samudragupta? A famous ruler of a dynasty known as the Guptas. So Samudragupta is a Gupta ruler. We know this. Okay. Now, see, we know about Samudragupta from a long inscription. So this inscription, right? This was inscribed on different surfaces, and then we know about this ruler also inscribed on the Ashokan pillar at Allahabad, right? So Allahabad pillar tells us about Samudragupta's expeditions also, all the battles that he fought, that he won, and then it was composed as a kavya. Very important, it was composed as a kavya, the Allahabad pillar inscription by Harishena. Harishena. This is the part from which the question comes in UPSC civil services examination, that Allahabad inscription was composed by whom? Harishen, and other names will also be given. And who was Harishena? He was a poet, court poet and minister at the court of Samudragupta. Okay. Now this inscription is of a special kind. Why? Known as a Prashasti. So this inscription is called as Prashasti, and a Sanskrit word, Prashasti is a Sanskrit word meaning in praise of. So it praises King Samudragupta, right? While Prashastis were composed for some of the rulers, okay, what happened, such as Gautami Putra Shri Satkarni also, right? We see a Prashasti related to Gautami Putra Shri Satkarni. They became far more important from the time of Guptas. Now about the Samudragupta Prashasti. Samudragupta Prashasti, what does it tell us? The poet praised the king in glowing terms. Okay, he is a warrior. He as a king who won victories in battles, right? And then the best of the poets, who was learned. Who is the best of the poets, right? And then he is also described as equal to the gods. So these information are given in Allahabad Prashasti. Prashasti was composed in very long sentences, and we can see one part of the Prashasti also. So here is the information given. Now, next important information which is relevant for examination is what? This. See, you will notice an area shaded in green. You will also find a series of red dot along the east coast. So there is a map in which there are red dots given on the east coast, right? And then shaded areas are given. Now we can see the map. Let's see the map first. This is the map, okay? Green area is shaded, and then there are red dots. What are these red dots? Cities conquered by the Guptas. These were the conquered territories by Guptas. Okay. Hello students, am I audible? Is everything clear at the board? Can anyone say hi? And am I audible clearly? The things on the board are clear? Okay, please type yes. Okay, so these dots are cities conquered by Gupta, and the pink area is the inner state. See, this is the inner state, and the information that we are going to read about is related to these states. Inner states are these. Okay, now outer states are light blue, shaded in light color, light blue color. This is outer state, this is inner state, and the green area is Aryavarta. These are the important territories. Now we will read about these areas. Okay. So first area, The map is based on the information provided in the Prashasti. This is a very important information because many of the times questions have come from this information. Okay, so this was given in the Prashasti. That is why it becomes very important. Harishen, who is Harishen? The court poet of Samudragupta, right? So he describes 4 different kind of rulers, right? And then tells us about Samudragupta's policies towards them, right? So how he used to handle these kings. Now the first rulers are called rulers of Aryavarta. We have seen the green, light shaded green area, right? So they were the rulers of Aryavarta, the area shaded in green on the map. And here there were 9 rulers, right, who were uprooted and their kingdoms were made a part of Samudragupta's empire. Okay. Next is the rulers of Dakshinapatha. Here there were 12 rulers, some of whose capitals are marked with red dots. So we saw the red dots, right? So these were Dakshinapatha rulers and their territories were marked with red dots and capitals. They surrendered to Samudragupta after being defeated and he then allowed them to rule again. So he was doing what? He was asking, when he was defeating the rulers, the kings of different dynasties, then he was asking to accept the suzerainty of Samudragupta. This was the policy that he was following for the Dakshinapatha rulers. Next is what? Inner circle. So we know, right? The inner circle states are what? Assam, coastal Bengal, Nepal, number of Gana Sangha in the northwest also and eastern parts also. They brought tribute. These inner states were very important, which were closely linked to what? The important Aryavarta states, right? So there were this Aryavarta state, then above that are inner states and beyond that are outer states, right? So they were paying tribute to Samudragupta, followed his orders, attended his courts. So they were closely associated. Okay, now the rulers of outlying areas, outer states. Okay, marked in blue on the map, we have seen that. Perhaps the descendant of Kushanas and Shakas, right? So Kushanas and Shakas came to India and they were called as Kushans and Shakas, right? Indo-Shak. The ruler of Sri Lanka is also lies in outer state area, who submitted to him and offered daughters to marriage. Okay, so these were the policies that was being followed. Okay, next information. Okay, now the genealogies. Okay, most Prashasti, they tell us about what? Mention the ancestors of the rulers. So ancestors are also mentioned. This one mentions Samudragupta's great grandfather. Okay, great grandfather, grandfather, father and mother. So about there also we find the information about the ancestors. Kumar Devi, his mother, Samudragupta's mother was Kumar Devi, very important, belonged to the Lichvi Gana, right? And then while his father Chandragupta, who was the founder of Gupta dynasty, to adopt the grand title of Maharaja Dhiraj. So very important information it has been given that Kumar Devi was Samudragupta's mother, Chandragupta was the founder of Gupta dynasty and he was calling, Chandragupta was calling himself Maharaja Dhiraj. So Gupta dynasty kings, they were adopting big titles like Maharaja Dhiraj, right? And a title that Samudragupta also used, adopted, Maharaja Dhiraj title. His great grandfather and grandfather are mentioned simply as Maharaja, right? And then it seems as if the family gradually rose to importance. This was for the first time in ancient history that people from Vaishya clan, right, they became the rulers, right? Earlier Brahmins were rulers and other caste people were rulers. We were following a caste system, right? So this was the first time that people from Vaishya, they became the rulers. Samudragupta in turn figures in the genealogies of later rulers of dynasty. Chandragupta too. Okay, so Chandragupta too is Samudragupta's son, and who is the father of Samudragupta? Chandragupta. Okay, we know about him from inscription and coins. Chandragupta too was also a very important ruler, and he is known to do what? Inscribe many inscription and coins also, right? Now, he led an expedition to Western India, Chandragupta II. He defeated Shakas also, and where he overcame the last of the Shakas. So, Shakas were defeated by Chandragupta II, and this is very, very important, Vikram Samvat, starting of an era. So, era beginning in 58 BCE is traditionally associated with Gupta king Chandragupta II. And why did this era begin? Because he defeated the Shaka and founded it as a mark of victory over the Shaka, Vikram Samvat, and then assumed the title of Vikramaditya. What kind of question can be framed from this information? First, Vikram Samvat era was started by whom? Second, Vikramaditya is also known as what, right? Who defeated the Shakas, the last of the Shakas in India? This question can also be asked, okay. So, he overcame the last of the Shakas. According to later belief, his court was full of learned people and there were golden gems, right. There were Navratnas in his court. Gupta period is also called as the golden period of ancient India, right. There were many, it was a time of many invention, many discoveries, right. Okay, now Harshvardhan and Harshcharita. So, he is also one of the important rulers of ancient India. Now, we will read about Harshvardhan and Harshcharita. What are the things that are mentioned? While we can learn about Gupta rulers from the inscription and coins, coins and inscription are a major source of history for Gupta rulers, and Guptas were the people who minted number of gold coins, okay. We can find out about some kings from biographies. Harshvardhan, who ruled nearly 1400 years ago, was one such ruler, and his court poet was who? Banabhatta. Who was Samudragupta's court poet? It was Harishen, right. And Harshvardhana's court poet was Banabhatta, who wrote his biography known as Harshcharita in Sanskrit. Okay, very, very important. The language is also sometimes asked of the biographies, autobiographies. Okay, this gives us genealogy of Harsha and ends with him becoming king. Xuanzang, very, very important. Huensang or Xuanzang, he was the person who spent a lot of time at Harsha's court, and he mentioned about Harsha's generosity also, left a detailed account of whatever he saw in the Harsha's empire, right. So, this question also comes that who was the foreign traveler who visited during the time period of Harshvardhan? It was Xuanzang, it was Huensang, okay. Next is Harsha was not. See now about the history of Harsha, who was his father and what all members were there. So, Harsha was not the eldest son of his father, but he became a king because of the circumstances. So, but became king of Ncer after both his father and elder brother died. His brother-in-law was the ruler of Kannauj, okay. So, Kannauj was the capital of Harshvardhana's empire, very, very important. And after Delhi, what? After, not Delhi, but after Pataliputra, Kannauj became an important center, right, during this time. Okay, brother-in-law was the ruler of Kannauj and he was killed by the ruler of Bengal, right. So, father killed, eldest son killed, right, and then his brother-in-law was also killed. Now, Harsha took over the kingdom of Kannauj and then led an army against the ruler of Bengal, right. Although he was successful in the east, he conquered Magad also and probably Bengal also. So, east he has covered, Kannauj is under his control. He was not as successful elsewhere, right. He could not expand his empire beyond the northern areas. He tried to cross the Narmada. Narmada, where is Narmada? Tell me in the comment section, where is Narmada? So, he was not able to cross Narmada to march into the Deccan, but was stopped by a ruler belonging to Chalukya dynasty, Pulakeshin II, another great ruler, right, and their fight is also mentioned, right. Now, we will study about the Pallavas, Chalukyas and Pulakeshins Prashasti. Prashastis are what? Inscriptions, okay. Okay, now these inscription, what do these inscription tell us about? Now Pallavas and Chalukyas, they were the most important ruling dynasties in South India, very important during this period. Okay, the kingdom of Pallavas spread from the region around the capital Kanchipuram to Kaveri Delta. This information is important, that Pallavas capital was what? Kanchipuram. Okay, remember this point. And then while that of the Chalukyas was centered around Raichur Doab, between the river Krishna and Tungabhadra. So this, both of these information can be given in the prelims examination and asked whether it is correct or not, right? So remember the boundaries. Okay. Aihole, very important, the capital of Chalukyas. It was the capital of Chalukyas. It was an important trading center also. It developed as a religious center also, right? And with a number of temples. Pallavas and Chalukyas frequently raided one another's land, right? They were constantly battling, okay? And then especially attacking the capital city, Kanchipuram and Aihole, right? Which were prosperous towns. Now, the best known Chalukya ruler we know is Pulakeshin II, right? He defeated Harsha also, and then we know about him from a Prashasti composed by his court poet Ravi Kirti. These court poets are very important, right? Who is the court poet of Chandragupta II? Who is the court poet of Samudragupta II? And Pulakeshin II. Remember the names. This will be asked in examination. This tells us about his ancestors who are traced back through 4 generations from father to son, and Pulakeshin evidently got the kingdom from his uncle. So this is the history, this is the genealogy. Okay. Now according to Ravi Kirti, he led what? Expedition along both the west and the east coast. So he is going west also and east coast also. Besides, he checked the advance of Harsha. Who checked the advance of Harsha? Pulakeshin II, right? There is an interesting play of word also, that Ravi Kirti mentions that after getting the defeat from Pulakeshin II, Harsha was no more happy, right? So Harsha word means, the meaning of the word Harsha is happy, right? No longer Harsha. Pulakeshin also attacked the Pallava king, who took shelter behind the walls of Kanchipuram. So this Prashasti is telling about the greatness of Pulakeshin II, that he attacked the Pallava king also. Pallavas and Chalukyas constantly fighting, right? But the Chalukyan victory was short-lived. See, both the Pallavas and Chalukyas gave way to new rulers belonging to next important dynasty, Rashtrakuta and Cholas. The great Cholas, right, about which we will study in class 7th. Now, the administration part, very important. Simple statement based question comes. Okay, how were these great kingdoms administered? So, as in the case of earlier kings, we have seen that land revenue was important, right, and the village remained the basic unit of administration. Now, new capitals were emerging, right? There were some new development as well. Kings adopted a number of steps to win the support of men who were powerful, right? Either economically, like the what kind of people were powerful and they had financial strength also, right? Economically they were strong. So they were what? Guild, Shrenis. They were people who were handling the market, right? Either economically or socially or because of their political and military strength. So this mentions, the example has been given, like some important administrative posts were now hereditary. See the administration of Harshavardhan, Chalukyas, Pallavas, right? Some of the posts were hereditary in nature, very important. This means that son will succeed father to these posts. For example, poet Harisena was a Mahadandanayak or chief judicial officer like his father. Okay. Next, sometimes one person held many offices. For instance, besides being a Mahadandanayak, the Harishen was, he was also Kumaramatya, meaning an important minister, and he was a Sandhi Vigrahika, meaning a minister of war and peace. See, One information is what? That Harishena, he was holding many posts. Second information is what? That Kumar Amatya is who? He is an important minister. So, it can also be asked second, who is Sandhi Vigrahika? This question has come in UPSC examination. Okay. So, Sandhi Vigrahika was responsible for what? He was a Minister of War and Peace. All these posts and their responsibility is also asked sometimes. Okay. Important men, sometimes they probably had a say in local administration also. These included the Nagar Sreshthi or chief banker or merchant of the city. So, these were the other people. See, the Sarthavaha. Sarthavaha, who is who? The leader of the merchant caravans, and the Prathama Kulika or the chief craftsman. All these posts are very important, and their meaning, what is the responsibility, is also important. Head of the Kayas. So, who is, and the head of the Kayas or scribe. Okay. So, these are the people. These policies were reasonably effective, but sooner or later men grew strong enough to set up independent kingdoms. Now, new kind of army. Okay. Like earlier rulers. So, we had, for the first time in history, we had standing army in the Magad Empire. Right. Now, some of these kings maintained a well organized army, means a standing army, right, and they were taking help of elephants also, there were chariots also, cavalry also, foot soldiers also. Now, besides, there were military leaders who provided the king with troops whenever king needed them, and then they were not paid regular salaries. Very, very important. They were not paid regular salaries, right? Highlight this part. Instead, some of them received grants of land. So, they were either paid in cash or kind, right? They collected revenue from the land and used this to maintain soldiers and horses and provide equipment for warfare, right? And then these men were known as Samantas. Again, another post. Again, we have another post which is important, which are Samantas, who were collecting revenue and administrating, maintaining the soldiers and helping the kings, right? New kind of army. Okay. Now, whenever the ruler was weak, Samantas tried to become independent, and this led to what? A different kind of kingdom, emergence of new kingdoms. Assemblies in the southern kingdom, very, very important. Okay. The inscription of the Pallavas mention a number of local assembly, Pallava inscription. These included the Sabha. During Rigvedic times also we know that Sabha was an assembly, right, which was an assembly of Brahmin landowners. Remember this point. Sabha in Pallava inscription is a what? An assembly of Brahmin landowners. Okay, this was an assembly of Brahmin landowners. This assembly functioned through subcommittees. Very, very important. Subcommittees were also there which looked after irrigation, agricultural operation, making roads, temples, etc. Now, another assembly, Ur. This question is asked that Sabha, what was the function of Sabha? What was the function of Ur? So, Ur was a village assembly founded in areas where the landowners were not Brahmins. Okay, specifically it has mentioned that the landowners were not Brahmin, and though that assembly is Ur. Okay, and the Nagaram, very, very important. Nagaram was an organization of merchants. So, we now know that there is this assembly which is called Sabha, then the next assembly is Ur, and then Nagaram, right. It is an organization of merchant. It is likely that these assemblies were controlled by rich and powerful landowners, Nagaram, right, merchant organization, and then many of these local assembly continued to function. Even now we have assemblies, right, and the names are different, totally different. Now, ordinary people in the kingdom. What were the kind of people? We can catch an occasional glimpse of the lives of ordinary people. We know about the history of the rulers, right, of different dynasties through inscription, right. But what about ordinary people? Who wrote about them? So, we find through plays and other accounts. Kalidas, very, very important. Okay, Kalidas, tell me during which ruler's time period he was there. Okay, is known for his plays depicting life in the king's court. So Kalidas was focusing of the life that was happening in the king's court. An interesting feature about these plays is that the king and most Brahmins are shown as speaking Sanskrit. So these people were speaking Sanskrit, while women and men and other than the king and Brahmins use Prakrit. Very, very important, right? See, Sanskrit was being used by kings and Brahmins, and Prakrit was being used by all the people who were other than the kings and Brahmins, say women and men. Okay. Now, his most famous play, what is that? Abhijanan Shakuntalam. Simple question that can be made is, Abhijanan Shakuntalam is written by whom? So it is Kalidasa, right? And then, is the story, subject can also be asked, what is the subject, right? Story of the love between a king named Dushyant and a young woman named Shakuntala, right? We find an interesting description of the plight of a poor fisherman in this play, Abhijanan Shakuntalam. Okay. Now, you can read all the information that is given in the box, right, which is very interesting also, and you can see if we read stories and it is interesting also, so it retains in our mind for longer time, right. Now, Chinese pilgrim Fa Hian, very, very important, right. So, Xuanzang visited during Harshvardhana period. Fa Hian noticed the plight of those who treated as untouchable. So, we know that there was this class who was called as untouchables. So, he witnessed this by the high and mighty. So, they were treated as untouchables. They were expected to live on the outskirts of the city. So, we know what was the kind of life that untouchables were living. They were not allowed to live in the inner areas. He writes, if such a man enters a town or a marketplace, he strikes a piece of wood in order to keep himself separate. This was the kind of discrimination that they were facing. People hearing this sound know what it means, and they would avoid touching that person, that man, or brushing against him, right. So, this was the social evil that existed during that time. And Bana Bhatta, who is Bana Bhatta? Tell me in the comment section. Provides us with a vivid picture of the king's army on the move. So, all these are mentioned in the books, different sources, right. Okay. So, this was our chapter, and now what we will do? We will look at the keywords. Okay. Now, we all know what is a Prashasti. Prashasti is an inscription. What is Aryavarta? So, simple terms can be asked. What all terms have been mentioned in the book, you have to know the meaning of every word. The post that has been mentioned, you have to know the responsibility of that post, because these simple questions come. Okay, Aryavarta is what? Okay, and now Dakshinapath. What is Dakshinapatha? Right, genealogy. What is genealogy? What is the source of genealogy? Right, hereditary officers. Right, was there any post which was hereditary in nature? And Samanta. Who were Samantas? Assembly, Nagaram, right, assemblies, different kinds of assemblies were there, like Sabha, Ur, right. What was the different nature of the assemblies, right. So, we have to understand everything, and we have to read the NCERTs through the UPSC perspective, right. The question that can come. So, this was chapter 9, and I will meet you in the 10th chapter now with a new live session. So, you can like, share and subscribe, and share this video with all your friends who are preparing for UPSC Civil Services examination. Thank you, and see you next time at Alchemy Ias Institute YouTube channel.